So yeah, I think I'll start. So everybody, welcome. Today I'll be doing the curling machine from HTB. And curling is an easy machine. It's pretty old. It got retired about more than a year ago. And well, it was a very good entry machine because it involved some basic encryptions, just just overall some basic web pen testing. So I thought it was really fun. So as always, you have to start off with doing an mmap scan. Just so I mentioned it, the IP is 10.10.10.150. So of course, you always have to know like what ports you can attack to just get an idea of what it is. So we can see we have port 80 open with HTB, and we have port 22 open with SSH. And SSH does not seem like a vulnerable version, so we're not going to look at that. But we can already see something interesting. We can see that the website uses Joomla, which is a CMS. So let's try it out. Let's check out the website. So right now we're on our website. You can see it's Joomla. Here in PwnBox, there is a default plugin installed in Firefox, which is called Webalizer. It shows which things like CMS, programming language, and other important things can be found on the website. So you have a bit of an idea like on what operating system is running and just the software that it's using. So right now we can't really see anything interesting. We can see a user called super user. That might be something. You can also see this here, a name, which might also come in important, which might also be important later on. But we can't know anything yet. So let's see, are there any special comments in the website, which is also something that sometimes might hide some little secrets. So up until now, there's nothing special yet. So let's go all the way to the bottom. And here we can see something weird. This is not usually included in the Joomla website. So we see this file called secret.txt. So let's check it out. Right in here, we see a weird string. And it looks like it's encoded. It does not look like something normal. So let's see if we can try and figure out what this is. So it looks like it might be something like base64, which is pretty common. So let's try to decode that. So right now what I'm doing here is I'm echoing this string and I'm piping that to another command. And this time we're using base64 and we want to decode it. So use the -d parameter. Now we get a string, curling 2018. This can be a possible password for a user. So that's important to keep in mind. So right here, so here on the website, we can see that there's a login form. So is there anything special we can find? Okay, it says home here, like where we are. Maybe it works with super user, then the password curling 2018. It does not work. So let's have another look. Can we find anything else? Yeah, we can find Flores. So that might be a possible user. So let's give that one a try. As we can see, we have logged in. So of course, also something very important is running GoBuster on the website. And well, I kind of forgot that now. So right now, I'm using just one of the common word lists. Okay, I'm used to Kali. This is not regularly in here. So let's see if we get anything special in here. So we have found administrator. It might be something special. So let's try that one out. Let's see what we got. Okay, we found a login. So we already got a login in here. So let's try it out. Okay, that one did not work. Okay, I logged in with the user and password we found. And as you can see, we were able to log in to the control panel. So, and from here, we can do something pretty easy. As you can, if we go over here, you see that we have some templates. So what we can do, we can use one of these templates and edit its code. And we can eventually just use that code to make sure that we get something like a reverse shell back, which is very handy to have. So let's see, where was it again? Should be this button. Yeah. So as you can see, we can edit files in here. So let's create a new file. Let's make it a PHP file. Let's just call it something simple like Parrot.php. So as you can see, we have now created a file. So what can we do from here? Well, we can get a reverse shell. There's this guy called Pentest Monkey, and he made a very good cheat sheet. So let's look that one up. So as you can see, there are lots of different reverse shells in here, but there's one that pretty much always works. That is this one over here. This is one of the standard netcat ones. This is with RM. So just copy this and paste it over here. So right now we have created a PHP file, but it does not know that's PHP yet. So we have to add the PHP. We have to add this to the code. So the system knows that it is PHP code. So what do we now want to do? Well, right now PHP just tries to execute this code, just this in PHP, but PHP does not have RM, so that won't work. So we have to run it as system. PHP does have this installed, the system function, which allows you to run code on the system. As you can see up here in PwnBox, it shows our IP. So we have to edit this to make sure it connects to our IP. And let's also start a listener on the port specified over here. So let's now save and close. So right now it should be saved. So right now, if we go back to this IP, and there is a templates directory in here, which is just something default for Joomla. So if we go, the name of it was protostar. So right now, if we go to Parrot.php, it should return a reverse shell, and it did not for some reason. Okay, so this does not work right now. So let's try it another way, because things can break. It's still a system. So yeah, okay, I think it did not save properly. But we can also edit like one of the index.php files, which will also work. So let's remove the code, because we don't need that code. all we need is our system command. Let's edit this again to make sure it does connect to us. Let's try saving it now. Okay, our listener is running. So you can now see that it says the requested page can be found. So maybe, okay. This is not normal, to be honest. This is not supposed to happen.
This is called the demo effect, right?
Yeah, it will break when you try and demo it.
You missed a closing curly bracket on the top line. Or an angled bracket, I mean.
Yeah, now it worked. So look, as you can see, things can go wrong and they will go wrong. So it just happens. There's not much you can do about it anymore. So we now have a shell on the machine called www.data. And right now, this shell is not a stable shell. We can't use simple key bunch like Ctrl-C to stop commands. And well, it will just end our shell, and we don't want that to happen. And right now, it looks kind of ugly, and we want to use a PTY session with bash. So first of all, you have to look if it has Python or Python 3. In this case, there is no Python, but we do have Python 3. So you can just use this. You can import P2I. Then you can use the P2I library to spawn bin bash. Right now, you can see our shell looks much better. But still, we can't use commands properly. So something we can use is if you press Ctrl-C, you can basically put the program to the background. So you have this thing on your system called, it's the term variable. It is set, just your terminal sets it to a value. It depends on whether you use tmux or the default parrot terminal, and just echo it and you'll get a result back. So also something important is to use scty raw minus echo. So if I type something now, you can't see output, but it is there. So right now we want to get back to our reverse shell. So for that, you can use fg. You don't see it, but it does come back. And if you now use ls, as you can see, we still have command execution. But now we want to make sure that it looks good. So we need to export the term variable with the one we got back here. As you can see, we can now use clear. That looks nice. And right now, we even have tab auto completion. So that's also very nice. Right now, let's have a look in the /home directory to see what user we have. In this case, we have the user called Flores. So let's see what's in his directory. So we have the user flag. Easy, right? But we unfortunately can't read the file because we are not Flores. And you can see that when we use this. The owner of the file is still Flores, and we don't have any permission to read it. So we'll just have to deal with that later. But there's this other file called password backup. And it's basically just garbled data. And there's not really much we can do with this. But if you want to run file on it to see what data it's holds, it just says ASCII.desk, but this is actually a hex dump. So what we can do is if we XSD this, but it gives us some weird looking variables. So let's pipe these? Let's see, man xxd. Can we pipe this somewhere else? Okay, no. Okay, let's just use this pw. Okay, so because we don't have right directories in this directory, we can't use it. So let's just bring it to /temp because almost every user has access to /temp. So if we go in here now, as you can see, we now have this file. But right now, this file looks completely different from what we got over here. So let's see what kind of file this is. So as you can see, this is a bzip file. So let's see if we can decrypt this. So because some files are choosy, you have to change it to bzip. You have to change the extension to bzip2. So we now have the pw.bc2 file. So if we now run bzip2 with the -d parameter on the pw, we have a new file called pw, and it's still a garbled mess. So let's see what this is. Well, this is gunzip. So once again, just move the file over, and this time we're using the .gz extension because, well, it is a gunzip file, and gunzip does not like it when it has another extension. So now we can use gunzip on this and unzip it. Let's see what we have now. And it's still a mess. So let's check it again. It's bzip2 again. So once again, just change this over to a bzip2 file. Then you can once again decompress it with bzip2. And we have another pw file. Let's see what it is now. It's a tar archive. So yeah, once again, just change the file extension to .tar because it's a tar file. And to decompress the tar file, you start xvf, and then on the tar file, let's see, we now have the password.txt. So that's pretty nice. We now have a user password. So like we used earlier, let's copy this. Let's just exit the shell because we don't need it. Let's create a new tab. So if we now go back to our nmap scan, okay, did not save correctly, that's right. But the port 22 was open with SSH. So remember the box had the user called Flores. Well, maybe we can try SSHing to the user with the password we just got. And it worked. Right now we are using Flores, and we can just get the user text flag. And right now I'm making sure that you can't see the user text to redeem it. So if you want to try it, you have to do it on the dedicated ledge, and you can just follow this right up. So for this machine, there are actually two ways to get root. There's one way where you just get the root flag, which is it gives you the root flag, but you want to try and get a root shell, which in this case you don't get. So let's start with the easiest way. That's the one where you just get root flag. So let's have a look in here. As you can see, we have access to admin area now. So in here, there are two files, input and report. Well, report seems to be empty, and input seems to be pointing to a URL and it's pointing to a local host. So let's wait for a bit. Maybe report has changed because, well, cron jobs might be on here. So because of cron jobs, let's try and get some basic enumeration going. for that, we have this script called linenum. Linenum is just a really easy script, and it just goes over some basic things that might be helpful in PrivAsk. So let's copy this file over to our local machine. Right now, what we want to do is make sure that we can get it to the other machine. And there's a very easy way to do this. We can use the Python module called HTB.server. So right now we're using Python 3, and we select the module HTTP.server. And I like using a port 80 because what? Okay, it might be bound to something else already. Let's just run port 8000. So as you can see, the HTTP server is now bound to port 8000. So right now, let's go in here, go back to temp, because it's just good practice to keep all your random scripts into /temp. So we have our script got linenum.sh, and we know our IP and what port HTTP is listening on. So let's see if we have a file which can read that. In this case, we have wget, which is just a very easy tool which allows you to get the contents of an HTTP request. So let's point it to our IP and our port. So we have that now, and we have to use linenum. We have to also get the file linenum.sh. So as you can see, we now have the linenum.sh file on the external system. So let's try running this, and it might find something. It might find some interesting things. So this takes about a minute or so. So something that might point to it is our suite binaries, like CISO was telling you about earlier. And those files, if you run them, you get the privilege of another user. So let's have a quick look. Okay, the SUID files. Let's see, is there anything special in here? No, there's nothing really special in here, so let's skip that for now. Maybe there are like cron jobs running on the system. And cron jobs are basically like things that are set to a timer, and they happen in a they do something that the user sets every few minutes, hours, days, just with information that you set. So let's keep scrolling through. Nothing special listening, no special name servers. Okay, let's see an Etsy cron tab. Okay, these two might be something. So let's try going back to our home directory. Maybe there's something in report now. Okay, this is quite weird. Okay, this is not supposed to happen.
Perhaps again the demo effect, right?
Yeah, there's supposed to be a cron job that every time that it listens to input, but right now that does not work. So that's, well,
maybe you need to try pspy or something.
Yeah, we can also get that one to try. It's also worth it.
See if it's actually running or not.
Let's see if it is its first. Okay, 64-bit. So let's just copy this.
It's always a great idea to deviate from a plan in the middle of showing something, right?
Things like this just happen. There's not much you can do about it. So we now have the pspy binary. So let's once again run our HTTP server. Let's go back to temp. So let's once again get the file from our system. 40,000. And right now we want the file pspy 64. Let's see. Don't forget to make it executable, because this can sometimes just mess things up. So let's have a look. Okay. Okay, yeah, as we can see here, there was a process, and it's trying to curl with and it uses home Flores admin area input. So that was the file we saw earlier with URL equals 127.0.0.1, and it outputted to Flores admin area report. So let's check that one out. Okay, there's still nothing in report.
What is actually at the URL location?
Yeah, it just points to localhost.
Yeah.
So it's just like it curls like this. Oh,
which is empty.
I think curl might be broken on the system, to be honest.
Are you sure, or is 127.0.0.1 just giving an empty response?
No, it is supposed to give it back a response.
You can use the verbose flag to see, or the headers flag to see if yeah. So it's not giving anything back, but it's sending the request. Could it be that you actually removed the template content?
Yeah, it might be.
In your initial step?
Yeah, probably.
Yes.
Let's see, maybe administrator works. Let's see if this works. Yeah, that works. So that was probably it. Okay.
You broke it for yourself.
Yeah. Sometimes things like this happen. You just ignore things like this. So right now we know that it should curl the contents of this. But well, we can change it. So instead of just HTTP, you can use there are other things you can use, like HTTPS, but also file, which allows you to get a file from your local system. So let's try editing input. And instead of calling HTTP on localhost, let's try getting a file. I want to get the file /root/root.txt. So, and now let's try watching this. So this, every 2 seconds, it gets the contents. As you can see, we have the root flag now. So it does work. It was just our index.html that was just messed up. So right now, we have the root flag. So basically, we are done. We can just show off this to hack the box, and we get root. That's it. But of course, we want to try and get a root shell, and well, it is possible. So as you can see, we are running Ubuntu, and Ubuntu has this thing installed called Snap. So if you look at the Snap version, this version is a malicious, has an exploit for it. So let's check that exploit out. So you want to look for Snap. And let's have a look at exploit DB. Okay, we already got dirty sock back. So that might be something interesting. So
Well, would this
let's have,
also come back from your lin enum as being an interesting thing to look at?
it might be. Let's go back to our lin enum. Okay, so let's see. So does it give back snap confine? But
Yeah.
I don't think that it just gives snap directly.
No, because it's probably it's not suet, right? No.
No,
All right.
I don't believe so. Oh, we can just quickly check it out. Yeah, no, it's not suet.
No. No.
So, well, we can just. So this is just another case where you just have to look on Google. So as we can see right here, there are exploits for it. So right here, it gives us a link. Oh. The bar's not coming up. Okay, so of course, let's just try out the newest one because, well, that one is supposed to be the most reliable one. So let's go back into this folder. Once again, get this one. To apply. Let's start our HTTP server. Okay, our HTTP server is now running. So let's go back to temp. And let's wget the binary needed. And in this case, we wanted to get this file over here. So let's check it out. Looks good. So let's give this file a try. So just let it run. Okay, as you can see, it succeeded. So let's try this one out. So we want to ask you to use your dirty sock. Let's try it out and we'll use the password dirty sock. And look, as you can see, we're now the user dirty sock, but if we use ID, we have sudo permissions. So what we can also do is sudo su. Once again, enter our password. And we are root. And now we can go to our root directory. And just, once again, we can check out root text. This time, we have a root shell. And we can now get root text, so we're done with the box. So yeah, there are two ways. Two ways, pretty fun box.
Yeah, and there's probably a third way where you actually put a
Custom cron job.
PHP file in the in the cron job.
Yeah, I was gonna say because that's running as root as well, right?
Yeah. There are lots of ways to finish this machine, and all of them are worth giving a try. It might take a little bit longer, but you just learn to recognize some more things, and maybe they will come in handy later in your life. So you never know.
In your hacked box life, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, well, some people were asking questions during your demo. Thanks for that. Answered most of them, I guess. The private lab that we have, that most of you now have access to, will be open until about 10:30ish. Then we move everybody out off of the dedicated lab and goes back to Hack the Box. Mohammed says, great demo. So there was a question that people are trying to follow along or are working on it as well. For the next about hour 20 minutes, we can work on it together. Hidde already showed you most of the steps, but some steps might be a little bit difficult to follow in the first try. So let's work on it together. There's also some other machines if you already have done culprit. So Hidde is here for questions. As you see, when Hidde does stuff also breaks, which is very good to see, right? I wanted to let you all know before I forget is that the registration for next month is already open. There's an event created on our Meetup page. I've not announced it yet because my experience, as soon as I announce it, a lot of people already jump on it, and it would be a shame for it to be immediately filled up while we're here talking about it. So take your sneak peek at the event and register ahead of the crowd, I would say. It's also in the Discord indeed, and because we have a bot, thanks to Stan, that will actually do the meetup notification. Yeah, I would say let's take some time, work on a lab. There's time for questions. There's always time for questions. Yeah. In the meantime, some form of gigantic bucket of water started falling down from the skies here with lightning and everything. So if I go away, it's due to the lightning. I hope not. We'll see. Please bring the Discord again. Sure, we'll put a link to Discord on the chat. That will be. Yeah, one important thing to note is that Hidde was working on his VIP server, so he messed up the machine just for himself. Yep. In the lab, it will still have index.php. So also, it's much appreciated if you do not change the index.php, because we see what what happens. That would not be, although it was quite funny in hindsight. It's not very nice if we're all on it and it does not work anymore. Then we need to reset it. That's what happens in the free labs as well, right? That we all run into. In the lab, the index. So let's reset the box. Yeah, that's a very good idea. Let's see. I will reset it. There we go. There's culprits. Are these boxes all retired? Yes, I believe they are all retired at the moment. Maybe Magic is
is still alive.
Magic is still alive. Imagine that. All right, it's being reset right now. So curling. I always think it's culprit, but at some reason I cannot get that name into my head. But I see that I don't have a user root yet, so I should do that machine.
Yeah, still worth claiming.
Yeah, there's quite a good question earlier by I'll probably say it wrong. Thanks. No. By 1 second. Oh yeah, right. Ali Lasfuli. I butchered that name. I'm sorry. But at one point there's this password backup file. how do you go from seeing that file to actually doing the XSD and then the unzipping and the untouring and unzipping and untouring and inception-like zip file? Can you explain your thought process there?
Yeah. So as you were able to see, the file looked kind of weird. It just had all of these just weird numbers and weird text, and usually that means that it is a hex dump. And if you want to reverse that hex dump, you can use the tool XSD with the -R option. That kind of allows you to reverse it, and that gives you some more data, and you can use that data again combined with the file command to see what kind of file type it is, and from there you can keep decompressing and keep using file. Just overall, you can just eventually you'll get it. It just
there's was the remark. Is it intuition? I answered with, well, if you've seen the output of a command like XSD, then you'll recognize the output from a command like XSD, and then you'll notice that it's a hex dump. But if you have never seen a hex dump, how would you go about actually finding out what it is?
Well, then I will just probably try to Google like the format you see, because first you see like a row of zeros, and under that you see 0, 0, 0, 0, and then 10, and you just see all these weird numbers like 425A, and that the text gives you a BZ, which looks kind of random, but maybe you can look that up. Like you see numbers and just some weird codes that kind of look like hex or base64. So just it's Googling. It's just takes time, and then eventually, if you Google it, you'll probably recognize it every time, because it almost looks the same. So yeah,
I would
eventually.
just throw it in CyberChef.
Yeah, that also works.
How does that actually work? I never tried. Did you?
Yeah,
just
you have an option in there that's called Magic, and it can tell you by an approximation, of course, what it probably is.
Yeah, I know that from if you put in like a base64 string, it will say, "Hey, this is probably base64."
And you try that, and then usually it works.
Usually it works. I'm quite interested to see if it actually does the reversing of an entire hex dump. I've never tried. I've never tried that, but that would be quite interesting to see.
I haven't tried it on hex dumps yet, but yeah, usually with ROT or base64 stuff like that. And sometimes they use different encoding formats, and then if you don't know what it is, with Magic you can usually find it. Most of the time you get the right one.
Yeah, I also use CyberChef a lot for XOR brute forcing when you do the challenges. Like last time we talked about the reversing, and then one of the techniques they use is XORing bits to mask strings. But when you put a string in, then you can actually get CyberChef to do a XOR brute force. So it will take one byte and then apply that to the string, and then you can just the next thing I do is Control F and I search for HTB, and then I generally find a flag, which is another thing you just know at one point because you've used it once, or you've run into it once. And I think that's the thing that Hidde was also saying, is that generally you recognize something because you've used it before, but how can you actually use it when you don't know about it? The thing there is that with HackedBox, and if you take a look at these machines that are retired, their pages will have a walkthrough associated with it. Then just following the walkthrough or just reading the walkthrough will get you into all these interesting commands that people use to solve things. And that allows you to recognize things as well. There's actually people that for fun watch the IPSec movies, which sometimes can be like 4 hours long. which is quite interesting. But you learn so incredibly, so much really. It's just recognizing the the Stan is saying in the chat, that's me. Yeah, that's I would say Stan would be a IPsec fanboy. Could that be a proper description? But yeah, getting to know these type of commands is a big part of actually solving most of the CTF challenges.
I think another nice example during this presentation was the moment when he found secret.txt, and the contents he instantly knew it was base64. I mean, I recognized it as well, but I think if you don't recognize it, then maybe you think, oh, it's a secret, so it's probably the password, and then you try it, and then it's not the password. So maybe it's encrypted in a way, and then you're just gonna try to decrypt it with all kinds of basic decryptions like a ROP13 or base64 or whatever, and if something readable comes out of it, then you might try that. I think that's a nice example from this current presentation that Hidde just knew. But if you don't recognize it, then, like for example, usually at the base64 it ends with an equal sign, but it wasn't here. So that also made it a bit harder to recognize it as such. But he did anyway, so
yeah,
there are all these kinds of examples.
Yeah, and the tricky thing here is, of course, that Hidde prepared this machine and got to know the machine before actually giving the presentation. So the question is, if you do it for the first time, it's not always very obvious that it's a base 64 thing. If it ends with an equal sign or two equal sign, it's like instant recognition. But in my case, if I look at what would have happened is that I would have found the secret.txt, and then I would have added it to my passwords.txt and used that for password brute forcing if I would have it at that time. Only when it does not work somewhere, I would go like, well, maybe it's something else. Simply because there's no instant recognition. And then you would, like Johan was saying, you throw it into CyberChef, and CyberChef will probably already say, well, hey, do you want to use some magic? Because I think it's base 64. That's the step to actually go from, hey, this is a secret to this is encoded, unless there's a very clear sign. Most people, I would think, will use it as a password first. It's also very interesting when you get to first do the sign up to hack the box. Most people, the first time you do it, you might want to think like, hey, I tried to do this call to this API and it returns this string and I look for an invite code. The first thing most people do is take that string and put it in invite code. Does not work. Oh, let's look at it somewhat further, right? So that's, yeah, what I think would happen. But Denny, it's very great that you're still here, right?
Yeah.
What about responsibilities, man? Nobody cares.
This is the thing with having two appointments at the same time frame.
Well, I think I'm glad we won, right? That's not entirely yet, no?
No, when you guys are going at it in Hack the Box, then I'm leaving. I like this question round. So.
Yeah. Do you have any more questions, Danny? Let's see how long we can take you, keep you here.
Well, I actually also had a question about the XXD command because I just didn't know it at all. Yeah, and I also didn't recognize that string of characters from, oh, let's maybe reverse hex dump it, but I think that just comes with experience, I guess. I also wouldn't quickly Google. To me, it looked like some sort of binary file in the first place when you did a cut command on it. So I thought maybe it was executable, but yeah. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have thought of reverse hex dumping it actually.
Now, the thing is that if you look at the output, it is way too neat, too structured. Like it has a column of numbers, and then it has a column of numbers, and then it has numbers neatly separated, and then the garbage at the end. That is, in that sense, way too structured to be a binary file. But you actually need some form of some of the techniques that we talked about with the reverse engineering presentation, like identifying what file it is and looking at the contents to actually figure out, hey, it is something else. One thing that you actually run into when you do the reverse engineering, you look for things that we call magic bits. And magic bits are basically the things that are always the same for that type of file. Like if you take a gzip file or an executable or an ELF file, it will always have the same bits set in order to identify that it is that type of file. So if you think about an executable, how does an executable get run? You just double click it and it works, right? But the operating system, when you double click it, it will actually read a part of the file and then say like, all right, let's try to identify what type of file this is and if I can do something with it. And then it will read some parts of it that it knows should be there. And when it does, it says, well, okay, those parts are there, so I can continue doing it, or else I will, if you're on Windows, it will ask you to open up the store to download a program that actually can read this thing. Those magic bits, if you looked at the dump from Hidde, one recognizable thing would be that somewhere in those strings it actually showed the magic bits for bzip, which you will only know if you actually have done some reverse engineering and worked on bzip files or type of files that have those type of magic bits. But then you could have also known, hey, this is something else. But if you're into reverse engineering, you already know that it's a hex dump and that you could reverse the hex dump. But that's beside the point, right?
Right. Thanks.
Let's
see. Can I think
In
of
other
more?
words, Danny, learn reverse engineering.
Yes. Come to the dark side.
I know another question. So for the Linux enumeration script and the pspy script and some other scripts you guys were naming to find the information needed to continue, basically.
Yeah.
How would you learn to know that these scripts exist besides just Googling for it?
Well, let's see. Hidde, do you want to answer that? If Hidde is still here, yeah, he's still here.
Well, if you read or watch write-ups from HTB machines, pretty much everybody uses those scripts, like Linux Smart Enumeration, Linenum, and pspy is just great for seeing the running processes. So it's just something that you encounter when you just become a part of the community. They just come across your way.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, the first time you start doing this, most people get lost or get lost. You get to a point that you enter a machine, and then you ask the question, and now? You do ls and you find some files maybe, or you do some basic Linux commands. But the thing is that there's this catch-22 in that you need to know something before you can actually start doing stuff. But how do you know this one something, right? And that on one side is the interest.
Basically knowing it exists in the first place.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't maybe even think of a script someone else wrote to find certain information that I was looking for. You know, maybe I would just only look for Linux commands, but instead it's like a script filled with commands somebody else hooked up together to find this information that I was actually looking for.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that if you do the OCP, there's this guy or girl, I don't even know. They identify themselves as Got Milk. And when I first started doing OCP, everybody was referring to Got Milk. And I'm like, well, what's Got Milk, right? And then you Google it, and he has this website. He's had this website for quite some time, in which he details, I'm going to say it's a he, in which they detail the steps that you should do to do this enumeration on machines. And from there, it's many scripts were made. I don't even know if it's like the first written thing that details all the steps that you should do. But yeah, knowing that we're actually in a area, a capture the flag environment, it means that people have built tools to do the things that we need to do, simply because most of us are quite lazy, in the sense that we don't want to repeat ourselves and just do all the commands needed to do all the things that show information. Just remembering all those things would be insane, right? Because there's like, if you take a look at lin enum or lin piece, I like lin piece better than lin enum. That's my my personal thing. There's like 30, 40 commands being run just to show you the basic information that you get to see when you run it. And just knowing all those commands is like, okay. Generally, I just run the scripts, and then when I find something that is quite interesting, or I want to know how did they get to that, I'll look up what command they actually ran to do it. But yeah, there's so many hidden things in those scripts that none of us would actually know off the top of our head, I would say.
Right.
Unless you're Carl probably knows. And I think Carl left already. I'm looking at it. Did he?
Is Carl a bit like Joost zal het weten?
Well, no, I was looking, I was adding people to the list, and I saw that Carl's rank is actually omniscient, which means like all knowing, which is quite funny, right? Yeah.
All right.
So do you have any more questions, Danny? This is like the Danny question hour. Oh, it's quite nice. Because you have questions that many people probably have.
You're answering them is also interesting for everybody else to hear. So, but no, that was basically the questions I had about this presentation.
Nice. Well, thank you for your time. Right, and, we've kept you here for at least 2 hours, so that's awesome. Right.
I should have left 33 minutes ago.
Well, yeah. Failed, right? That's that's what we can say. If I look at the chat, some people actually put the links to Got Milk. It's from 2011. It's quite, I would say, old. It's 9 years, but I think it's, for me, it's one of the most, at the time, the definite guide to doing finding the information about privilege escalation. And at first, I did all of those commands. I would go put his website next to my terminal and do copy paste, and then I figured out there are scripts, right? So that's good. Yeah, let's see if there's any more questions. Yeah, Metasploit's always a very good topic. People love. Let's see. Does anybody think there's anything wrong with Metasploit? Or using Metasploit?
Well, you're not allowed to use it for the OCP, right?
Well, yeah, that's the one condition, right? That you can use it once, right?
Yeah,
or
but
you
it's
can
completely
use
pointless.
Yeah, well, the thing is that some exploits, if you look on HTB, I think Blunder was one of them. There's only an exploit available on exploit.db, and it's for Metasploit, so it's only part of Metasploit. So the fun thing is that if you do OSCP and they train you with the idea of doing boxes without Metasploit, because Metasploit hides a lot of things for you, right? It takes care of, hey, I'm going to create shells, I'm going to set up reverse shells, I'm going to do staging and get you all these tools onto the machine so that you can have a very nice shell experience on that machine. And it does all the messy things about configuring exploits and running them. Because most of the time when you have an exploit that's outside of Metasploit, you just download the exploit, then you modify the Python file, and then you hope that the shell code inside that Python file does not destroy your hard drive, stuff like that, right? And then you run it, and then it gives you an error because Control-M is in the file because somebody copied it from a Windows machine to a Linux machine and forgot to remove the DOS end lines instead of Unix end lines. Then you need to fix all that, and then when it's running, and you go like, well, I actually achieved something. And if you do the same thing in Metasploit, it's like search for the name, all right, use it, set the R host, cool, run, and or exploit, depending on if you like the stronger term or the weaker term. And then you get a shell, and then you're done. So within OCP, they say, well, you can only use it on one machine. And that basically means that nobody actually uses it during the exam because everybody thinks like, well, I'm not going to use it because if I need to use it later, then I mess up my chances. It's quite funny. Let's see. What do we have? Well, Carl says Magic is pretty good for beginners. Yeah. I thought Magic was a very good machine, very nice machine to do. Rene is reminiscing about the 80s in which he wrote his first hex dumper. Nice. What did I do in the 80s? Not writing a hex dumper yet. What was the target box again? Curling, yeah. Cut milk. Can someone explain which of these tools can be used with the OSP training exam? WinPiece, exploit suggestor, Sharphound. Thank you for the response. Well, InfoSec, I see to it. And you can use all of the above, I guess. The only exemption for OCP is that you cannot use Metasploit on more than one machine during the exam. And so most people just say, don't use Metasploit. But yeah, the rest is all fair game, right? Yeah, Hidde says, if it auto exploits, don't use it. Yeah. I once talked to a guy who thought arbitrage was a good thing to run on the OCP. It's not. It's a collection of tools that just you point to a machine and it does all the work for you. The thing to remember with OCP is that they want you to do the work and to write down the steps that you did. So if you use something that you do not know what the steps are and you cannot show what all the intermediate steps are, then you should not use it. You have to enum, feel free. Yeah, there we go. Enough about Metasploit. Yeah. Why in the session the script got downloaded to local and then downloaded to the target? Why not in one go? Yeah. Don't have to write, so you have to use your machine to download it. Yeah, very good. Well, Hidde already answered most of the questions. I'm just reading him answering. The next thing I read is that Hidde is answering it, right? Right. Cool. Cool. Yeah. So does anybody have any more questions? We have like about an hour left, so people can work in the labs if they want. There's 4 machines that we can try, which curling is one of them.